There are places on this earth where the boundary between the visible and invisible worlds grows thin, where the membrane separating our reality from the realm of spirits, demons, and ancient gods becomes as fragile as morning mist over a rice paddy. Southeast Asia is such a place. From the volcanic islands of Indonesia to the mountain temples of Myanmar, from the tropical forests of the Philippines to the river deltas of Vietnam, this region has cultivated one of the richest, most terrifying, and most profound collections of supernatural beings ever imagined by human consciousness. These are not mere stories told to frighten children or entertain tourists. These are living traditions, belief systems that continue to shape daily life, influence architecture, guide spiritual practices, and define the relationship between the living and the dead. For thousands of years, the peoples of Southeast Asia have understood something that the modern world often forgets: that reality extends far beyond what we can see, touch, or measure. The spirits are real. The monsters are watching. The old gods never left. In villages across the Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, and beyond, people still place offerings at spirit houses, still avoid certain trees at night, still know the rituals that protect against creatures that hunt in darkness. These beliefs are not superstition, but survival, not fantasy, but a sophisticated understanding of forces that exist whether we acknowledge them or not. The creatures we will encounter in this journey are neither good nor evil in any simple sense, but primordial, intelligent, and profoundly alien to our own understanding of morality and existence. Welcome to Echoes of the Old World, where we explore the myths, monsters, and mysteries that refuse to die. If this is your first time joining us on this journey into the supernatural, subscribe now and ring that notification bell, because we are about to venture deep into territories where most dare not tread. Each video on this channel is a descent into ancient wisdom and primal terror, a resurrection of stories that deserve to be remembered and respected. Do not let these echoes fade into silence. The old world is calling, and it demands to be heard. Before we begin our exploration of specific creatures, take a moment and leave a comment below telling us where you are watching from. Are you in Manila, surrounded by the very streets where the Aswang still hunts? Perhaps you are in Kuala Lumpur, where modern skyscrapers cast shadows over banana groves that once harbored the Pontianak. Or maybe you are thousands of miles away, drawn by curiosity to understand beliefs that seem impossibly distant from your own experience. Wherever you are, your perspective matters, because these stories belong to all of humanity, not just to the cultures that birthed them. Share your location, share your thoughts, and let us build a community of those who refuse to forget. Southeast Asia is a crossroads of cultures, religions, and spiritual traditions. Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, and indigenous animist beliefs have layered themselves upon this landscape for millennia, creating a supernatural ecosystem of staggering complexity. Unlike the relatively unified mythologies of Europe or the distinct pantheons of East Asia, Southeast Asian folklore is a tapestry woven from countless threads, each culture contributing its own demons, its own protectors, its own understanding of the forces that govern life and death. A spirit that appears in one form in the Philippines may have a cousin or counterpart in Malaysia with different characteristics, different weaknesses, different appetites. Yet beneath this diversity lies a common understanding that humans share this world with beings of immense power, and that respect, ritual, and knowledge are the only shields against the darkness. The creatures you will meet in this collection are not Hollywood inventions or sanitized fairy tales. They are entities documented in historical records, described by witnesses, depicted in temple carvings and ancient manuscripts, and still reported in contemporary accounts. The Manananggal that severs her own torso to hunt pregnant women in the dead of night. The Bakunawa, the colossal serpent that devours the moon and must be driven back with noise and fire. The Pontianak, born from the agony of maternal death, who announces her presence with the cry of an infant before revealing her true, monstrous form. The Naga, serpent lords who control water and weather, equally capable of blessing or destroying entire kingdoms. Each creature is a window into the fears, values, and wisdom of the people who have lived with them for generations. What makes Southeast Asian supernatural beings particularly compelling is their refusal to conform to Western categories of good and evil. The Nats of Myanmar must be honored and appeased regardless of their disposition, for they are forces of given consciousness and will. The Barong and Rangda of Bali represent not opposing teams in a cosmic battle, but complementary forces that maintain balance through eternal conflict. Even the most monstrous entities, the ones that hunt and kill without mercy, often have origin stories rooted in tragedy, injustice, or the violation of natural and social laws. They are not evil for evil's sake, but manifestations of consequences, embodiments of what happens when order breaks down, when respect is forgotten, when the boundaries between worlds are carelessly crossed. This journey will take us through more than 25 creatures, organized by the nations and cultures that know them best. We will begin in the Philippines, where Spanish colonization and Catholic faith merged with ancient animist beliefs to create a uniquely terrifying supernatural landscape. From there, we will travel to Malaysia, where Islamic traditions overlay older fears of forest spirits and vengeful ghosts. Thailand will reveal how Buddhist philosophy interprets and coexists with entities that predate the Buddha himself. Indonesia, with its thousands of islands and hundreds of ethnic groups, will show us the most diverse collection of supernatural beings in the region. We will visit Myanmar, Cambodia, Vietnam, and touch upon the lesser-known but equally rich traditions of Laos, Singapore, and Brunei. Each stop on this journey is a revelation, a reminder that the map of the supernatural is far larger and stranger than most of us ever imagined. Prepare yourself for descriptions that will disturb, for concepts that challenge comfortable assumptions about reality, for stories that end not in triumph but in warnings unheeded and consequences paid in full. The creatures of Southeast Asia do not exist to comfort or entertain. They exist to remind us that we are not the apex of creation, that our understanding is limited, that there are powers in this world that answer to no human authority. They are teachers, albeit harsh ones, imparting lessons about respect for the importance of community bonds, the dangers of greed and arrogance, and the eternal truth that death is not an ending, but a transformation into something else, something that may still have desires, grievances, and the ability to act upon them. As we stand at the threshold of this exploration, consider what it means that these beliefs persist. In an age of smartphones and satellites, of scientific materialism and digital connectivity, millions of people across Southeast Asia still light incense for spirits, still avoid certain places after dark, still pass down the old stories to new generations. This is not ignorance, but continuity, not superstition, but a different way of understanding the world, one that acknowledges layers of reality that rational thought alone cannot access. The creatures we will encounter are not relics of a primitive past, but living elements of cultures that have survived colonization, modernization, and globalization without surrendering the fundamental truth that shaped them. That we share this world with the unseen, and ignoring them is far more dangerous than believing. The veil is thin, the spirits are listening, and our journey into the heart of Southeast Asian folklore begins now. We begin our journey in the Philippines, an archipelago of over 7,000 islands where Catholic faith and ancient animist beliefs have merged into something uniquely powerful and terrifying. The supernatural landscape here is not a relic of the past, but a living reality that shapes behavior, architecture, and community life, even in the 21st century. In rural villages across Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, people still speak in hushed tones about creatures that hunt when darkness falls, being so deeply embedded in the cultural consciousness that they appear in contemporary films, literature, and even legal testimonies. Among all the entities that haunt the Filipino night, two stand above the rest in terms of fear and fascination: the Manananggal and the Aswang. These are not cousins or variants, but distinct predators, each with its own hunting methods, weaknesses, and cultural significance, though their names are sometimes used interchangeably by those who do not know better. The Manananggal is perhaps the most visually horrifying creature in Southeast Asian folklore, a being whose very existence defies the laws of and anatomy. Picture a woman, outwardly normal during daylight hours, living among her community, perhaps even respected or trusted. But as night approaches and the village settles into uneasy sleep, transformation begins. The Manananggal's torso separates from her lower body at the waist, a clean severing that leaves her legs standing motionless in whatever dark corner she has chosen for the night. From her back sprout enormous bat-like wings, leathery and membranous, capable of carrying her upper body through the night sky in search of prey. Her tongue, the true instrument of horror, extends to impossible lengths, becoming a proboscis that can pierce through roofs made of nipa palm or bamboo, seeking the wombs of pregnant women to feed on the unborn. The Manananggal's preferred victims are pregnant women in their third trimester, though she will also target the sick, the sleeping, and occasionally the hearts of those who possess strong life force. Her hunting method is methodical and cruel. She circles above the village, her keen senses detecting the scent of amniotic fluid or the beating of a fetal heart through walls and distance. Once she identifies her target, she lands silently on the roof, extends her tongue through gaps in the thatch or wooden boards, and feeds. Witnesses who claim to have survived encounters or observed from hiding describe a slight sucking sound, barely audible, and the Manananggal's eyes glowing faintly in the darkness, like dying embers. The woman she feeds upon often experiences what modern medicine might diagnose as unexplained miscarriage or stillbirth. But the community knows the true cause. They have seen the marks, the inexplicable weakness, the way life drains from both mother and child. Yet for all her supernatural power, the Manananggal has weaknesses that observant communities have learned to exploit. Her separated lower half must remain hidden and protected during her hunt, for it is her anchor to human form and her point of greatest vulnerability. If someone discovers her legs and spreads salt, garlic, or ashes upon the exposed flesh, the Manananggal cannot rejoin her body when dawn approaches. The rising sun will destroy her, burning her upper half to ash as she desperately tries to reconnect with her lower body before the first rays touch her. This creates a grim calculus of survival in villages where the Manananggal is known to hunt. Vigilant neighbors conduct night watches, searching for the telltale signs of a severed torso hidden in shadows, hoping to save the innocent by condemning the predator to death by sunlight. The Aswang presents a different but equally terrifying threat. For unlike the Manananggal with her distinctive hunting method, The Aswang is a shapeshifter whose true form and vary by region and account. In some provinces, the Aswang appears as a beautiful woman by day, charming and sociable, who transforms into a monstrous dog-like creature by night. In others, she takes the form of a large pig or bird. Some accounts describe the Aswang as male, others as capable of appearing as either gender. What remains consistent across all variations is her insatiable hunger for human flesh, her ability to replace herself with a doppelganger while hunting, and her targeting of children, pregnant women, and the recently deceased. The Aswang is not merely a monster, but a category of creatures, an umbrella term encompassing several distinct supernatural predators that Filipino folklore has grouped together. One of the most disturbing abilities attributed to the Aswang is her capacity to consume the dead from within their graves, leaving the coffin intact and the body appearing whole from outside, while only a hollow shell remains. During wakes, families in regions where Aswang beliefs are strong take elaborate precautions. They place thorny plants beneath windows, hang garlic and salt around the room, keep bright lights burning through the night, and maintain constant vigil over the deceased. These are not quaint customs, but desperate defensive measures. For an Aswang can slip through the smallest opening, transform herself to fit through cracks, and consume the body of a loved one, while mourners doze mere feet away. The morning revelation that the corpse has been violated is considered one of the most profound violations a community can suffer, a desecration that demands retribution. Detecting an Aswang requires knowledge and vigilance, for they hide in plain sight within communities, often for years before being discovered or suspected. According to tradition, their eyes reflect light in a distinctive way, when glimpsed in mirrors or polished surfaces, appearing to glow red or showing the image of an inverted person within the pupil. They avoid holy objects, blessed salt, and particularly the tail of a stingray, which when pointed in their direction causes them physical pain and forces them to reveal themselves. Some communities employ a technique involving coconut oil that has been blessed by a priest or shaman. When this oil is rubbed on the eyelids, it supposedly grants the ability to see through an Aswang's disguise, revealing their true monstrous form beneath the human facade. Whether these methods truly work or simply provide psychological comfort in the face of overwhelming fear, they remain part of living tradition. What gives both the Manananggal and the Aswang their enduring power in Filipino culture is not merely their capacity for horror, but what they represent on a deeper level. These creatures embody anxieties surrounding pregnancy and childbirth in areas where maternal and infant mortality were historically high, and modern medical care remains limited. They personify the fear of betrayal by neighbors and community members, the terrifying possibility that someone you know and trust transforms into a predator when darkness falls. They reflect concerns about proper treatment of the dead and the sanctity of burial, about maintaining vigilance and community bonds as protection against threats that authorities cannot or will not acknowledge. In regions where formal law enforcement was historically weak or absent, believing in the Aswang created a form of social control, a reason to watch neighbors carefully and maintain moral behavior, lest one be accused of supernatural crimes. Historical records from the Spanish colonial period document accusations of being a Manananggal or Aswang that led to real violence and executions, showing how belief in these creatures has had tangible, often tragic consequences. Even today, occasional reports surface of people attacked or killed because communities believed them to be Aswang in disguise. This darker aspect of the folklore cannot be ignored, for it demonstrates the dangerous edge of supernatural belief when it intersects with fear, superstition, and mob justice. Yet to dismiss these stories as mere primitive ignorance misses their cultural function and the genuine experiences of those who claim encounters. For millions of Filipinos, the Manananggal and Aswang are as real as any other predator, and the rituals of protection are as necessary as locking doors or avoiding dangerous areas at night. The Manananggal and Aswang appear throughout Filipino popular culture, from classic horror films of the 1960s and 70s to contemporary television series and comic books. They have been adapted, reinterpreted, and sometimes softened for modern audiences, occasionally even portrayed as misunderstood anti-heroes rather than pure monsters. Yet, in the provinces, in villages where electricity remains unreliable and medical care distant, the old beliefs persist without irony or metaphor. Pregnant women still request blessed medallions and garlic to hang above their beds. Families still conduct thorough night watches during wakes. Children still learn which houses to avoid after dark and which neighbors are whispered about in tones of suspicion and dread. The creatures endure because the fears they represent endure, because the vulnerability of life in rural areas creates space for explanations that go beyond the rational. To encounter the Manananggal or the Aswang in their original cultural context is to understand that folklore is never just stories. It is a system of knowledge, a framework for understanding misfortune, a set of rules for survival in a world where danger takes many forms. These creatures teach caution, promote community vigilance, explain the inexplicable, and provide some measure of control through ritual and recognition. They are the Philippines' contribution to humanity's eternal effort to name the darkness, to give form to our deepest fears so that we might have some hope of defending against them. Whether they exist as literal beings or as powerful cultural constructs makes little difference to those who have internalized their lessons and structured their lives around avoiding their hunger. Deep within the mist-shrouded jungles and mountain ridges of the Philippines resides a creature that embodies both chaos and wisdom, humor and terror, trickery and divine guardianship, the tikbalang. Often described as towering and humanoid, with the elongated limbs and horse-like head of a demigod beast. The tikbalang is one of the most enduring figures of Filipino mythology. Unlike the ravenous Manananggal or the shape-shifting Aswang, the tikbalang is neither purely malevolent nor benevolent, but something older and far more complex. He is the spirit of the wild paths, the guardian of forgotten trails, the one who stands where human settlement ends and untamed begins. To speak his name at the edge of a forest is to acknowledge that you are stepping into a domain that does not belong to humankind alone. It is said that the tikbalang waits silently along mountain trails, hidden by fog and towering foliage, his hooves clattering faintly where stone meets moss. Travelers report strange sensations, the feeling of being watched, of walking in endless circles, of hearing laughter that is not entirely human. When one experiences this confusion, wandering in circles until exhaustion and fear overwhelm all reason, it is understood that the tikbalang has chosen to play. The creature delights in mischief, leading people astray until they lose all sense of direction, only to release them after they surrender to humility and ask permission to leave. The ritual remedy is both simple and profound. Turn your shirt inside out, speak softly to the wilderness, and request the prankster's mercy. This act of inversion symbolizes a shift in perception, an acceptance that humans are not masters of every path they tread. Despite his trickster reputation, the tikbalang is not a senseless tormentor. He serves as a silent enforcer of balance, ensuring that arrogance and disrespect toward the natural world are punished swiftly. Elders teach that forests, rivers, and mountains have their own inhabitants, ancient beings like the tikbalang who must be respected through ritual and restraint. Those who desecrate sacred places, cutting trees without offering or shouting loudly at night, may find themselves afflicted by sudden illness or perpetual misfortune attributed to his wrath. Offerings of tobacco, coins, or prayers are made at crossroads or trail beginnings to request safe passage. Some locals claim that befriending a tikbalang, through years of reverence and reciprocal offerings, grants protection from wild animals and natural disasters, suggesting his role as both tormentor and guardian of those who understand his laws. Myths surrounding his origin vary widely. In some stories, the tikbalang was a fallen guardian spirit, once celestial, but cast down to earth for pride or rebellion, taking on the shape of both divine and animal. Others see him as a local deity from pre-colonial animism who was assimilated into later belief systems. This ambiguity reflects his place between worlds, the line where myth meets morality, wilderness meets civilization. There are even legends that certain tikbalang serve as mounts for ancient gods, an image immortalized in old wood carvings where a humanoid figure astride such a beast rides into battle across clouds. In every interpretation, however, the same lesson endures. Respect mysteries, for its rulers walk unseen beside you. The tikbalang is often depicted as enormous, several meters tall, with fur in shades that vary depending on region, sometimes black as volcanic ash, sometimes golden like the afternoon sun filtering through treetops. His mane is said to shimmer, a halo of earthly divinity, while his eyes glow with sentient fire. When angered, he can crush stone with a stomp or vanish instantly into fog. Yet older folks say he rarely kills directly. Instead, he punishes through fear, confusion, and humility. To encounter him and survive is to return wiser, more cautious, aware that the world holds far more than what the human eyes can claim. As you leave the dense forests guarded by the tikbalang and turn your gaze upward to the endless night sky, another creature of legend reveals itself. Vast, luminous, and terrible in its majesty, the Bakunawa. In stark contrast to the wilderness-bound tikbalang, the Bakunawa rules the celestial and oceanic realms, a primordial serpent whose hunger transcends mortal comprehension. Ancient Filipinos once looked to the heavens and told stories of a time when there were 7 moons lighting the night. The Bakunawa, enamored by their beauty and brilliance, rose from the cosmic sea and devoured them one by one, swallowing 6 whole before humankind intervened to save the last. The myth of the Bakunawa explains lunar eclipses in poetic and terrifying terms. When the moon darkens suddenly, people say the Bakunawa has risen once more to swallow it. And only noise, metal clanging, drums beating, shouts of defiance, can drive the beast away. Communities would gather outdoors, producing a deafening roar of sound and fire until the serpent retreats, releasing the moon back to the sky. Though grounded in celestial observation, the story carries a deeper spiritual thread. The Bakunawa represents not only cosmic greed, but also desire, love, and imbalance within creation itself. Some tales even suggest that the serpent did not devour the moons out of hunger, but longing, wanting to possess their brilliance and shine with borrowed light. The appearance of the Bakunawa is described in terms both grand and dreadful. A gigantic sea dragon with the body of a snake, the head of a fish or crocodile, whiskers flowing like river currents, and scales that reflect the patterns of stars. Its eyes blaze with lunar fire, and its breath creates whirlpools vast enough to drag ships to their doom. During eclipses, fishermen claim the waters grow restless, pulling and pushing in rhythms that echo ancient drums. In this way, the myth intertwines astronomy, the sea, and human vulnerability under forces far beyond understanding. Even now, the word Bakunawa holds cultural weight, invoked in stories about balance, envy, and natural calamities. The serpent story also reflects humanity's attempt to rationalize catastrophe, bridging scientific phenomena and emotional truths. The disappearance of the moon becomes not a mechanical occurrence, but a battle for survival between creation and destruction. When people shout, drum, or light torches against the darkened sky, they reaffirm their agency against chaos. It is an ancient act of defiance, primitive perhaps, but deeply human. In this ritual noise lies both fear and hope. Fear that light may vanish forever, and hope that sound, unity, and faith can restore what darkness tries to consume. The Bakunawa thus becomes a symbol of resistance as much as terror. The duality of these two creatures, the ground-born Tikbalang and the sky-swallowing Bakunawa, illustrates a foundational truth of Filipino spiritual cosmology. The world is a living continuum from earth to heaven to sea, each layer populated by sentient powers. The Tikbalang disciplines individual arrogance in the wilderness, while the Bakunawa challenges cosmic arrogance in the heavens. Both impose limits on human ambition and force acknowledgement of forces larger than oneself. In living tradition, these stories are told not as entertainment, but reminders. Fishermen leave offerings before sailing. Travelers offer prayers before crossing mountains. Children are warned not to mock the unseen or neglect ritual respect. Through myth, the moral fabric of respect and gratitude is maintained. Colonial influence altered, but never erased these legends. Spanish friars, uncomfortable with such creatures dwelling outside Christian doctrine, reinterpreted the Tikbalang as a demon leading souls astray, and the Bakunawa as a metaphor for the devil attempting to devour divine light. Yet beneath these imposed narratives, Filipino communities maintained older understandings, blending Christianity with ancestral myth. The Tikbalang became both a devil and an angel, depending on who spoke his story. The Bakunawa, meanwhile, intertwined with Marian devotion. The moon as the virgin's crown, the serpent as the cosmic tempter defeated by faith. These layers of interpretation transformed Filipino folklore into a remarkable example of spiritual syncretism, where pre-colonial and colonial beliefs coexist in uneasy harmony, neither erasing the other. Modern Filipinos continue to honor these creatures in art, literature, and popular culture. Giant papier-mâché Tikbalang figures march in festivals, their horse heads towering above the crowd while dancers mimic both mischief and reverence. The Bakunawa appears in songs and murals as both destroyer and protector, symbol of transformation and resilience. In coastal villages, stories of eclipses still stir old instincts, the urge to make noise, to resist cosmic darkness. Even without literal belief, the emotional resonance endures. These beings have become part of national identity, signifying a cultural memory older than any single religion or empire. Beneath the myths lies a profound understanding of equilibrium. The Tikbalang and Bakunawa function as guardians of the boundaries humans constantly test. Between civilization and wilderness, light and darkness, humility and hubris. They serve as reminders that every gift carries consequence, every exploration an unseen cost. The forests may still hide laughter that is not human, and the sea may still conceal eyes that gaze upwards, longing for the moon. To acknowledge their presence is to walk more gently upon the world, aware that the forces sustaining life can just as easily reclaim it. Together, the Tikbalang and Bakunawa stand as emblems of the Filipino relationship with and the cosmos. One intimate, mischievous, and grounded in the soil. The other, vast, remote, and cosmic in its hunger. Through their stories, entire generations have learned that power deserves humility, that wonder coexists with fear, and that faith, whether in ritual, community, or sound, keeps the light alive even when the night grows heavy. The night in Malaysia is not silent. The forests whisper, the palms sway, and sometimes, carried on the humid wind, comes a sound that chills even the most rational heart. The cry of an infant followed by the scent of frangipani flowers. Those who know the old stories recognize this as no ordinary child, but the calling of the Pontianak, one of the most fearsome and enduring spirits in Southeast Asian folklore. To outsiders, she appears as a ghostly woman, beautiful, pale, often dressed in flowing white. But beauty here is deception, a veil disguising vengeance older than memory. The Pontianak is not merely a ghost, but a wound in the natural order, the restless shadow of a woman who died unjustly, her rage so strong it defied death itself. Her story begins with tragedy. The Pontianak is said to arise from the spirit of a woman who died during childbirth, or while pregnant, denied peace by sorrow or betrayal. Abandoned by lovers or mistreated by family, she emerges from the grave not as a fragile soul seeking rest, but as a predator doused in grief and wrath. Her presence announces itself with contradictions, sweetness and decay, beauty and horror, attraction and death. Witnesses describe an unbearably sweet scent preceding her approach, the aroma of jasmine or frangipani, the same flowers used in funerals. Then comes laughter, soft at first, then closer, higher, until it twists into a shriek that freezes the heart. The Pontianak's voice is her instrument, her herald, her weapon of disorientation. Those who hear it too near seldom live to describe the sound. In her most common form, she is ethereal yet tangible. Her skin is pale as bone under moonlight, her hair black and heavy, cascading past her waist. Her eyes glow faintly yellow or red when angered, and her fingernails are elongated, sharp enough to rip through the flesh of her victims. She appears near banana trees, which folklore describes as her resting place during daylight hours. Locals still avoid these trees after dusk, believing her spirit nestles inside their hollow trunks, swaying with the wind. The Pontianak kills by embracing her victims, strangling them while draining their life force. Sometimes she feasts upon their internal organs, but often her vengeance is more symbolic. Men who wronged or disrespected women, those who exploited or betrayed love, become her primary prey. The cycle of revenge that defines the Pontianak is not random, but ritualistic. Accounts vary, but all maintain that she can disguise herself as a living woman to move among humans, choosing her victim with deliberate patience. A charming stranger at a roadside stall, a figure glimpsed near an old bridge. These brief encounters conceal the spirit's predatory patience. When the chosen victim is alone, she reveals her face, which shifts from angelic beauty to ghastly terror in an instant. Her mouth widens impossibly, her sharp teeth gleam, and her eyes burn with supernatural fury. For some, she comes not to kill, but to terrify into madness, ensuring that suffering mirrors her own torment. Her vengeance is as varied as her motivations, both personal and archetypal. Betrayal avenged through fear, unjust death balanced by the suffering of the living. To encounter the Pontianak is to witness the embodiment of balance through anguish. Communities developed numerous methods to protect against her or ward her off. Among the oldest is the use of sharpened iron nails. If one drives a nail into the hole at the nape of her neck, sometimes said to be a wound left from childbirth, the Pontianak becomes temporarily human again. In this subdued state, she transforms into a beautiful woman, quiet and passive, even capable of marriage and domestic life. Yet this act of taming does not erase her. It merely restrains it. The nail is both key and curse. Should it ever be removed, the Pontianak returns immediately to her vengeful state, often destroying those who bound her. This symbolism conveys deep cultural meaning about control, repression, and the consequences of attempting to subdue grief rather than heal it. Many Malaysians interpret the Pontianak through multiple lenses, as cautionary tale, cultural metaphor, and gendered justice. She is vengeance for forgotten women, the voice for those betrayed by patriarchal society, a reminder that suffering cannot be silenced through denial. Rural societies once invoked her as a moral pressure to ensure men treated women with care, to deter cruelty against expectant mothers, to reinforce community harmony through empathy. Over time, these lessons merged with spiritual fear, transforming moral teaching into myth and myth again into religion. Even in modern cities like Kuala Lumpur, stories persist. Taxi drivers recount passengers who vanish mid-ride, leaving behind only the lingering fragrance of frangipani. Motorcyclists on forested roads claim to see a woman in white waving for help. Her beauty so radiant, they stop, only to discover in the reflection of their headlights eyes too large, teeth too sharp, smiles too wrong. The Pontianak's domain extends beyond Malaysia into Indonesia, Singapore, and southern Thailand, where she assumes nearly identical forms but slightly different names and customs. In Indonesia, she is known as kuntilanak, often appearing near graveyards or trees by rivers, her laughter echoing like the cries of infants. In all variations, the theme of maternity and death intertwines. The agony of dying while giving life, transformed into predatory vitality. Scholars of folklore see this as the cultural processing of childbirth mortality and social neglect of women's suffering. But for those who live near the forests or rivers that the Pontianak haunts, the explanation is simpler. She is there because the dead remember pain, and sometimes pain demands witness. Her moral complexity deepens when one considers how communities simultaneously fear and pity her. Offerings of rice, flowers, and incense are sometimes left near banana groves to appease her. In certain regions, women who die during pregnancy receive special burial rites to prevent their spirits from transforming into Pontianak. Songs and prayers accompany the burial, asking both forgiveness and rest. Elders recount that speaking kindly of the dead, especially of women who died giving birth, prevents her emergence. Thus, compassion is the true ward, not merely ritual objects of protection. The Pontianak, in this reading, becomes a mediator between the living and the dead, demanding that human compassion extend beyond death itself. The duality of fear and reverence surrounding her mirrors Malaysia's profound spiritual landscape, a realm where Islam, animism, and ancestral tradition coexist. Imams bless homes with verses, yet villagers still perform ancient offerings beneath moonlight. The Pontianak occupies the space where faiths overlap, her existence neither denied nor fully accepted by religion. She represents an old fear that theology cannot wholly erase because it speaks to primal injustice, not cosmic sin. In her haunting lies a truth humans all share, that grief unresolved becomes force, memory, and motion. The Pontianak walks not just because she was wronged, but because her suffering was ignored. The forest silence she inhabits has symbolic weight. The banana trees she favors are fast-growing and fragile, prone to bending and breaking under their own weight, symbols of ephemeral life and mortal frailty. Her association with these plants reminds listeners of how easily life can be lost and how swiftly forgotten, turning fertility into a site of dread. The flowers she carries or leaves behind are both funeral and offering, gifts of beauty coexisting with death. Every element of her myth speaks to this intricate duality: the sweetness of scent masking rot, the beauty of form concealing rage, the longing for rest shadowed by endless wandering. The Pontianak is not just a ghost story. She is poetry written in screams and silence. Modern Malaysia has not forgotten her. Movies, songs, and television shows depict the Pontianak in countless forms, from spectral avenger to tragic anti-heroine. Urban legends now place her in highways, hospitals, and abandoned apartments, her presence evolving alongside the cities themselves. Yet, even as she adapts, the old traits persist. The laugh, the scent, the white garment floating at the edge of vision. Her legend endures precisely because it evolves with the people who tell it. She rises each generation, shaped anew by changing fears. Once the symbol of childbirth death, now the embodiment of urban loneliness and guilt. The Pontianak remains contemporary because grief never truly modernizes. In understanding the Pontianak, one begins to see that Malaysian folklore treats the supernatural not as alien intrusion, but as emotional continuity. Spirits are the leftover intensity of human experience, magnified by the collective imagination of a culture. The Pontianak's scream is grief itself given form, her eternal wandering a lesson about remembering compassion and acknowledging loss. To ignore her stories is to ignore part of what makes life sacred. The recognition that death may still feel, that memories may still move among us. She is vengeance, she is sorrow, but she is also the voice of remembrance echoing through the tropical night, calling us to listen, to respect, and to never look away from pain that seeks to be seen. When night returns to Malaysia, when the wind shifts through the palm leaves and scent of flowers drifts across the dark, perhaps it is only the air, or perhaps something more. The Pontianak still watches from among the trees, her laughter both haunting and human. To those who believe, she is the embodiment of consequence and the guardian of forgotten grief. To those who do not, she remains a story powerful enough to make even skeptics glance twice into the shadows, wondering what waits just beyond the reach of light. In the humid nights of Malaysia, where mangrove roots coil like serpents and the air thickens into a palpable tension, certain terrors take shape that defy the boundaries between body and spirit. This chapter unravels three of the most haunting presences in Malay folklore: the Penanggalan, the Hantu Raya, and the Toyol. Each reveals a different face of the unseen world, one grotesque, one bound by dark pacts, and one eerily childlike, yet corrupted. Together, they form a triad of horror that reflects the anxieties of rural life, the ethics of power, and the supernatural consequences of greed. Malaysia's folklore is not populated by chaotic forces alone, but by beings that mirror the very flaws of humanity. The Penanggalan is perhaps the most infamous of Malaysian night spirits, a creature born from deceit, hunger, and transgression. To see her is to witness a vision so unnatural that the mind can barely comprehend it. She appears as a woman whose head detaches from her body, entrails trailing behind like vile ribbons glistening in the moonlight. Unlike the Pontianak, whose form retains beauty to lure victims, the Penanggalan is grotesque, shamelessly revealing the inner anatomy of desire and corruption. Yet even this monstrosity stems from human ambition. Legend tells that the Penanggalan was once a midwife or healer, a woman who sought forbidden knowledge to maintain beauty or extend life. When her secret ritual was discovered, she was cursed, her body condemned to exist in separate halves, her head forever forced to leave her body and feed on human blood to survive. She prowls through the night, searching for victims, driven by an insatiable thirst, focusing particularly on newborns and women who have just given birth. Houses with new mothers are marked by glowing light or the smell of vinegar, the only defense known to repel her. Villagers prepare barriers of thorny vines around windows or hang bundles of sharp bamboo beneath roofs to entangle her floating entrails as she descends. Should she become trapped by these defenses, dawn will destroy her, leaving only her hollow body to be discovered in daylight. The Manananggal's legend thus carries a dual warning: against the overreach of mortal curiosity and against the community's loss of vigilance. Through her, fear of the flesh becomes fear of the forbidden, the body itself a symbol of uncontrollable desire. Unlike the Pontianak, the Manananggal's existence often begins with personal sin, greed for beauty, power, or youth. Her hunger for blood mirrors her earlier ambitions. She feeds to sustain what she once desired to preserve, creating an unending cycle of indulgence and decay. In some traditions, she returns at dawn and carefully reattaches her head to her body, sealing the neck with spice and vinegar to hide the connection. If the body is discovered and desecrated, she dies instantly, unable to reconnect at sunrise. The folk rituals surrounding her reveal a society deeply aware of the fragile line between healing and harm, between sacred knowledge and corruption. Women who possessed healing skills, especially midwives, were respected yet feared, their art straddling the boundary between spiritual benevolence and malign sorcery. While the Manananggal embodies hunger and physical horror, the Hantu Raya thrives in the realm of power and servitude. Literally translated as the Great Ghost, this spirit acts as a supernatural familiar bound to a master, often a human who has made a bargain for wealth, influence, or prestige. The Hantu Raya does not take life by physical violence, but instead manipulates fortune and perception, allowing its master's life to flourish in unnatural ways. It works tirelessly in secrecy, performing tasks while its owner sleeps, defending them against misfortune and enhancing their social standing. But this invisible assistance comes at a steep cost. The master must offer continual sacrifices, typically of animals, food, or in darker versions, droplets of blood. The Hantu Raya's appearance is said to shift with its purpose. Some describe it as a shadow that moves against the light, others as a tall, faceless figure with long arms and the faint smell of smoke. Its voice is rarely heard, but when it speaks, it does so directly into the mind of its owner, a sign of their pact's intimacy. Unlike many malevolent beings, the Hantu Raya is not inherently evil. Rather, its morality reflects that of its summoner. A good master may use the spirit for protection and prosperity, maintaining balance through strict adherence to ritual. A greedy master, however, inevitably loses control, for the spirit grows hungry for offerings as its power is overused. When payment is neglected, it turns upon its master, consuming vitality and haunting the family line until debts are paid in suffering or death. This mythology of reciprocal bondage reflects Malaysia's rural hierarchies and spiritual economy. Power in human society rarely comes without corruption, and the Hantu Raya dramatizes this imbalance. The idea that wealth or success might secretly be the product of a supernatural helper remains pervasive. Neighbors whisper that someone's sudden fortune or inexplicable luck may come not from hard work, but from hidden pacts. The Hantu Raya thus functions as both moral lesson and social equalizer. It explains the seemingly unearned success of others and reinforces cultural expectations of moderation. Like all Malaysian spirits, it teaches balance. Humans may command the invisible, but they are never beyond the reach of its demands. In striking contrast stands the toyol, perhaps Malaysia's most unsettling creature precisely because it disguises terror with innocence. The toyol is a diminutive being, appearing as a green-skinned or gray child with oversized eyes and a mischievous grin. It is usually created by black magic practitioners who resurrect stillborn infants or summon the spirits of unborn children to serve them. Unlike the hantu raya, which bargains for power, and the Manananggal, which hunts for blood, the toyol steals for wealth, coins, jewelry, or small valuables. It is the spirit servant of greed, a reminder that even the smallest corruption can ripple through generations. To keep a toyol, one must perform elaborate rituals of containment and appeasement. The creature cannot be allowed to grow restless. Otherwise, it turns against its caretaker, manipulating emotions and creating chaos within the household. Offerings of milk, sweets, and toys must be presented regularly to keep it docile. If neglected, the toyol becomes vindictive, targeting its owner's family or tormenting them through childish pranks that escalate into disaster. Some stories say that toyol spirits grow jealous of living children, attempting to harm them out of envy. This mixture of innocence and malice makes the toyol one of the most tragically symbolic entities in Malay folklore. An embodiment of innocence corrupted by greed, carelessness, and unnatural control over life and death. The toyol also serves as a profound reflection of loss within traditional society. The transformation of stillborn or unborn life into a spirit slave is both horrifying and pitiable, expressing the immense grief of mothers who never saw their children live. Those who bind toyols are said to carry a permanent stain on the soul, for the act violates the most sacred natural law, the boundary between creation and desecration. As with the hantu raya's pact or the Manananggal's curse, seeking supernatural advantage always exacts a price. Thus, in the moral architecture of Malay mythology, greed itself is the true monster, and each of these spirits personifies its consequence. Despite their terrifying depictions, the stories of the Manananggal, hantu raya, and toyol are rarely told merely for shock. They serve as spiritual infographics of ethics and consequence, guiding behavior in societies where supernatural belief once governed practical life. Pregnant women learned the value of vigilance and humility through the story of the Manananggal. Community leaders and merchants were reminded of responsibility and moderation through tales of the hantu raya. Parents mourning or desiring children were taught restraint and reverence for life via the cautionary legend of the toyol. Each being holds a mirror to a different human frailty, lust, ambition, avarice, and transforms it into supernatural symbolism to maintain social order. Even today, these spirits persist in modern consciousness, altered but not forgotten. Television serials in Malaysia and Indonesia feature the Manananggal, reimagined as horror icons that speak to both female rage and societal injustice. The hantu raya appears in ghost stories of businessmen who gain enormous wealth only to vanish mysteriously. The toyol, on the other hand, finds new life in urban legends about mischievous spirits stealing from shops or electronics, mysteriously disappearing overnight. These evolving narratives prove that the supernatural in Southeast Asia is not static myth, but living commentary, adapting its lessons to match new worlds of power, technology, and temptation. When night falls and the air grows heavy over the villages, these stories still whisper through the trees and the hum of distant insects. The Manananggal, hunts in silence. The Hantu Raya watches from unseen corners, and the Toyol giggles in the darkness, where coins glint faintly like forbidden treasures. Fear of them binds communities, yet also connects them to ancient wisdom, to the realization that haunting is not only the presence of spirits, but the persistence of consequence. What begins as desire, if left unchecked, always ends in servitude to the forces it awakens. The unseen world only gives what it takes back with interest. In the intricate spiritual geography of Southeast Asia, few figures command as much reverence and awe as the Naga of Thailand. To outsiders, it might seem merely a serpent, a mythic dragon winding gracefully through legend. But within the Thai worldview, infused with both Buddhist and animist threads, the Naga stands not as a monster, but as a divine intermediary between realms. Its coils encircle the cosmos, linking the underworld, the waters, and the heavens. The Naga is a reminder that creation itself moves in cycles, that life and death are currents in the same river of existence. The image of the Naga is woven through Thailand's identity. From the sinuous carvings that guard temple staircases to the depictions of serpents rising from golden roofs, they are everywhere. Symbols of fertility, power, and divine guardianship. Some represent cosmic order, while others serve as protectors of sacred places, defending the Buddha's teachings from corruption. The word Naga can refer to both an individual deity and an entire class of serpent beings, each varying in temperament and domain. Legends describe the Mekong River as having been carved by the thrashing of a colossal Naga's body, transforming landscape into testament. In every ripple of water, believers see the echoes of its undulating form. Among the most revered stories is that of the Naga Mukalinda, the serpent king who sheltered the Buddha during a storm as he meditated beneath the Bodhi tree, coiling his immense body to shield the enlightened one. Mukalinda personifies selfless devotion and cosmic stewardship. In Thai art, his hooded form spreads protectively over the seated Buddha, a seven-headed canopy of scales and serenity. Yet even in this act of guardianship lies a subtle duality. The Naga embodies both protection and potential destruction, its vast power contained only through virtue and balance. It is worshipped and feared, venerated and appeased, existing beyond the moral simplicity of good and evil. In Thai culture, legends tell of entire kingdoms beneath rivers and lakes, glimmering cities adorned with jewels and shimmering light where Naga princes rule. These subterranean domains mirror earthly kingdoms, yet remain invisible to ordinary eyes. Occasionally, humans cross paths with these beings, whether through accident, destiny, or desire. Marriages between humans and Nagas populate many Thai folk tales. Often, a mortal man unknowingly weds a woman who later reveals herself as one of the serpent people. When he breaks a taboo, peering upon her true form, violating a sacred oath, she vanishes forever into water, leaving him to wander in sorrow. Such tales serve as moral allegories on obedience, humility, and the peril of curiosity. The world of the Naga is one of contracts, unseen rules, and delicate respect for mystery. In the northeast region of Thailand, stories of direct interaction with the Naga remain living tradition. The mighty Mekong River itself is regarded as their principal dwelling, its currents alive with their movement. Each year, in the province of Nong Khai, during the Buddhist festival of Ok Phansa, locals gather to witness the phenomenon known as the Naga fireballs. Small glowing orbs rise mysteriously from the river's surface and ascend silently into the night sky. To scientists, the event may be explained by natural gases. But to believers, it is the breath of the Naga kings, paying homage to the Buddha. Crowds watch in reverent silence before erupting in prayers, their faces illuminated by the brief fire haunting the surface of the water. Faith and physics merge here under starlight, as they often do in Thailand's devotional culture. The Naga also plays a role in the life of the land itself. Farmers rely on the monsoon, and by extension, on the Naga's favor to ensure fertile crops. Offerings are made at riverbanks before planting and harvesting, rice wine poured onto the soil as libation for unseen watchers. During drought, traditional ceremonies called Bang Phai Phaya Naga are performed, part spiritual appeal, part celebration. Large effigies of serpents are paraded through villages, drums echo like thunder, and songs plead for rain. This blend of performance and prayer exemplifies how myth sustains daily life, transforming cosmic beings into agricultural allies. To defy the Naga, or to pollute their waters, is not merely environmental sin, but sacrilege, an act against the very pulse of the earth. What makes the Naga particularly fascinating is its adaptability. The myth travels fluidly across cultures. Hindu scriptures speak of Nagas as semi-divine denizens of Patalam, guardians of treasure and knowledge. Buddhism reinterprets them as spiritual converts who protect sacred texts. Local animism identifies them as ancient spirits of rivers and fertility. Thailand, inheriting all these threads, wove them into a seamless tapestry. The Naga thus stands as a figure of synthesis, absorbing beliefs from India, Cambodia, and indigenous Southeast Asia into a new and uniquely Thai symbol of harmony. Even temple architecture reflects this layering. The stairways ascending to pagodas resemble the undulating body of a serpent, reminding visitors that enlightenment, like ascent itself, must ride upon the back of primordial wisdom. Artistic depictions of the Naga range from stylized ornament to living presence. Stone reliefs from ancient temples like Wat Phra That Phanom show Nagas coiling protectively around Buddhist relics. Modern depictions, such as the grand sculptures overlooking the Mekong, present them as glittering dragons of turquoise, emerald, and gold mosaics, their scales gleaming beneath sunlight as if alive. The aesthetic beauty of these dragons masks a spiritual seriousness. Each sculpture is an act of devotion, reaffirming the ancient covenant between humans and the unseen custodians of the waters. The eyes of the Naga in these artworks are always expressive. Calm yet knowing, gentle yet warning, many Thais believe those eyes see beyond appearances, discerning whether human hearts approach with reverence or arrogance. Paradoxically, while they protect sacred spaces, Nagas are also keepers of forbidden knowledge. Legends tell of those who sought to steal their hidden jewels, gems that contain the essence of wisdom or the power of eternal life. Few who attempt such theft succeed, for the Naga is not easily deceived. The recurring theme of humans defying or trespassing upon the realm of Nagas serves as a reminder that knowledge unearned can destroy. The river that sustains can also drown. The spirit that blesses can also curse. In this duel lies the philosophical core of Naga belief. Balance sustains all creation, and excess invites ruin. Gender plays an important role in these myths as well. Female Nagas are often portrayed as mediators or tempters who teach men humility through love and loss, while male Nagas embody regal protection and serpentine wisdom. The coexistence of both, feminine allure and masculine strength, completes the cycle of spiritual wholeness. In Thai performance art and storytelling, this duality finds expression in dances where performers dress as serpents, moving fluidly in cycles to represent water, time, and rebirth. Each gesture echoes the sacred union of opposites: patience and swiftness, grace and danger, compassion and wrath. The Naga dance, with its hypnotic rhythm, blurs the line between ritual and art, turning mythic memory into living movement. The devotion toward the Naga continues powerfully into the modern day, transcending rural belief. Government buildings, universities, and even banks incorporate Naga iconography, acknowledging its role as patron of prosperity and protection. Monks still chant verses invoking Mukalinda during meditation retreats, seeking the Serpent King's peace beneath figurative storms of the mind. And yet, the Naga remains wild. No matter how artfully depicted in marble or gold, its true spirit belongs to the rivers, to the unseen depths where it coils in patience. Its myth reminds Thailand that even within devotion, there must be humility. Humans may revere the divine, but they must never presume to own it. As night descends over the Mekong, villagers light incense along the shore, the smoke curling upward like faint river mist reaching for the stars. Children watch the waters for signs of movement. Elders tell stories of the time a fisherman glimpsed a pair of golden eyes beneath the surface. The Naga endures not as superstition, but as continuity, proof that ancient imagination can still weave meaning into modern existence. Every droplet of water carries memory, every whisper of current murmurs old names. And as the river flows quietly under the moon's reflection, one might feel an unsettling certainty that somewhere in its shimmering depths, the sacred serpent still moves, guarding both the land and the fragile balance between reverence and pride. Translate, across the heart of Thailand, where spirit houses gleam beneath banyan trees and incense smoke weaves a bridge between worlds, the restless dead are never far away. Among the myriad spirits that populate Thai belief, two linger in the collective imagination with particular dread: the Phai Krasui and the Phai Krahang. Both are entities of hunger and transgression, creatures that embody the costs of desire and ritual impurity. Their haunting presence reminds Thai society that even the smallest act of spiritual negligence can disturb the balance between the sacred and the profane. These are not simply monsters that roam the night. They are emblems of deeper truths about sin, suffering, and redemption. The Phai Krashu is a grotesque yet strangely pitiful entity. She appears as a floating woman's head, trailing her internal organs like shimmering threads illuminated by moonlight. Her form drips with a faint bioluminescence, an eerie glow that betrays her flight through the darkness. By day, she passes as an ordinary woman, often beautiful and quiet, living unnoticed among neighbors. At night, she detaches from her body, leaving the torso hidden in some secluded place, then rises into the sky to hunt. Her hunger is insatiable. She feeds on blood, offal, and the fetuses of livestock. But her appetite is not born of malice. It is punishment, a curse upon those who violated purity through forbidden practices or sacrilege. Translate. Folklore claims the Phai Krasu was once a noblewoman who practiced dark sorcery, seeking beauty or love through magic unwelcomed by heaven. When discovered, she was burned alive for her crimes. As the flames consumed her, she uttered incantations so powerful that her head tore free from her body and fled before the fire could annihilate her soul. Since then, she wanders eternally, guided by hunger and regret. Her historic origins reach back even further, perhaps entwined with ancient Khmer and Lao beliefs, showing that Thailand's spectral traditions cross cultural and linguistic borders. The Phai Krasu is shared fear, a symbol of how easily humanity becomes entangled in its own longing. The rules surrounding her are precise. She cannot cross salted ground, and sharp objects, particularly thorns, are anathema to her, their purity slicing through her unclean presence. Those who suspect someone of being a Krasu may sprinkle salt or place thorny branches around the home to trap her spirit before dawn, preventing her from returning to her body. If this confinement succeeds, the body dies as the sun rises, hollow and lifeless. These methods, soaked in both superstition and ritual logic, defend communities not only from the supernatural, but from fear itself. Each act of protection, lighting incense, hanging cloth charms, reciting blessings, functions as collective therapy, reaffirming unity against the unknown. Translate. Yet in many Thai villages, such stories are not merely tales, but living memories. Locals recall nights when lights shimmered along rice fields, moving too rhythmically to be fireflies. They speak of cries carried by the wind or of cattle found drained of blood by dawn. To outsiders, these are legends embellished by imagination. To believers, they are warnings that no one is beyond consequence. The modern world may pave roads and raise glass towers, but the old hunger still moves among them, reminding each generation of moral debts unpaid. If the Phai Krasu represents hunger born of sin, then her male counterpart, the Phai Krahang, personifies punishment through incompleteness. He is among Thailand's most enduring rural spirits, a man who bears enormous wooden wings, fashioned from rice winnowing baskets or banana leaves, attached to his arms. In some versions, he carries a single glowing lantern clenched in his teeth. The Phai Krahang soars across the sky with awkward, flapping movement, half man, half bird, forever suspended between worlds. Unlike the tragic melancholy of the Krasu, the Krahang is often depicted as vulgar, mischievous, even comedic in urban retellings. But beneath the absurdity lies an older truth. He is a spirit trapped in liminal exile, embodying the shame of desecration and the futility of escape. Translate. According to tradition, the Phai Krahang was once a farmer who practiced forbidden magic to enhance his strength and harvest. The spells he used required purity of intent, yet lust and greed corrupted them. At his death, his soul could not ascend, bound instead to his decaying body. Over time, he transformed into the winged creature villagers still claim to see gliding over rice paddies under blood-orange moons. He feeds on filth, excrement, carrion, and unclean waste, mocking human pretensions of civility. The contrast between the beautiful, organ-trailing Krasu and the grotesque, filthy Krahang underscores Thailand's dual vision of karmic justice. Sin of desire punished through beauty, sin of defilement punished through degradation. Human encounters with these spirits follow patterns etched deeply into communal psychology. The Phai Krasua is feared at childbirth. Mothers wrap their stomachs in blessed cloth to ward her gaze, and amulets bearing Buddhist scripture hang above cradles. Men returning from night work speak softly and avoid whistling, lest they attract her attention. By contrast, the Phai Krahang haunts forest edges and rice barns, stealing animal carcasses or preying upon livestock left unguarded. When dogs bark aimlessly at the night, villagers whisper that the Krahang is near, unseen but circling. Ritual specialists, known as More Phai, who deal with spirits, may be summoned to banish these beings through chants, invoking both Buddhist and animist authority. This synthesis of religion and folk practice reflects how woven together the sacred and fearful truly are in Thai life. Translate. Despite their horrific portrayals, Both spirits occupy ambiguous, moral territory. The Phi Krasu's hunger is not purely malicious. She suffers as much as those she hunts. When she cannot feed, her organs shrivel, her glow dims, and she weakens. A cycle of unending torment. The Phi Krahang, stripped of human dignity, mirrors the same tragedy. His grotesque consumption of filth symbolizes the human compulsion to seek sustenance even in corruption. In this way, the two become reflections of humanity's extremes. Beauty chased until it turns monstrous. Strength pursued until it degrades into subhuman craving. Each exists as both punishment and warning. Modern portrayals of these entities in Thai media maintain this delicate complexity. The Phi Krasu has become an icon of feminine suffering and rage in cinema, featured in horror films that both exploit and reinterpret her image. She is often reimagined as a misunderstood figure, cursed not for wrongdoing, but for challenging patriarchal order. Meanwhile, the Phi Krahang appears in folklore-based comedies, embodying rural eccentricity and moral caution in equal measure. Together, they illustrate how myth evolves alongside society, becoming flexible metaphors for anxieties that transcend time. Women's autonomy, the decay of tradition, the corruption of desire. Translate. Religious interpretation situates both of these spirits within the Buddhist cosmology of suffering and rebirth. They are neither condemned to eternal damnation nor granted peaceful reincarnation. Instead, they dwell within intermediate states, their forms shaped by attachment. The Phi Krasu's glowing heart symbolizes desire unextinguished, her endless flight the cycle of craving that traps minds in samsara. The Phi Krahang's clumsy wings signify effort misdirected, the quest for transcendence gone awry. In this spiritual framework, the path to release is not through destruction, but through accumulation of merit, compassion, and purification. Stories of these spirits therefore function as cautionary sermons, expressing theology through imagery of grotesque beauty. For all their horror, these myths endure because they serve social purpose. The presence of hungry ghosts enforces moral codes in invisible ways. Fear keeps communities disciplined. Children return home early, adults maintain ritual hygiene, and hospitality toward monks and ancestors remains sacred duty. At a deeper level, such legends affirm the Buddhist notion of interdependence. Every thought, action, and emotion ripples outward, generating karmic consequences across lifetimes. Fear becomes education, horror becomes parable, myth becomes doctrine clothed in darkness. Translate. As in villages of other countries, the supernatural in Thailand is rarely divorced from the natural world. The flicker of fireflies over wetlands, the calls of night birds, and the strange phosphorescence of decay all merge seamlessly into the imagery of the Krasu and Krahang. Witnessing such phenomena without scientific explanation would render anyone a believer. Even in the present era of neon streets and smartphones, rural families still hang charms etched with Pali script, still pour a cup of water for unseen watchers before bed. Belief persists not because people fear monsters, but because the act of believing binds them to one another and to the unseen structure of moral reality that defines their culture. In the deepest sense, the Phi Krasu and Phi Krahang are mirrors rather than nightmares. They show that the line between spirit and human, hunger and holiness, is thinner than it seems. The woman who desired beauty became cursed to haunt the night. The farmer who sought strength became bound to filth. Each story asks its listener the same unspoken question. What hunger do you serve, and what might it cost to satisfy it? Such reflection is the true purpose of these tales, far more enduring than fear itself. Translate. When dawn comes and the chants rise from temple courtyards, even the most devout believer feels comfort knowing that the darkness has retreated for now. But as the sun burns away the mist over the rice fields and the Mekong glitters in the distance, villagers glance toward the horizon, remembering. For as long as desire exists, and as long as humans forget humility, the hungry ghosts will return, gliding silently through moonlit skies, looking for warmth, for repentance, for anyone wise enough to listen rather than run. Translate. In Bali, the island where gods breathe through music and demons dance with firelight, every ritual trembles with ancient power. The Balinese believe that existence itself is a delicate balance between chaos and harmony, continually enacted through ceremony and story. Among the island's most profound mythic figures stand three beings whose relationship defines this cosmic drama. Barong, the protector spirit of light and order. Rangda, the dread queen of sorcery and destruction. And the Layak, her servants of dark magic. These entities are not static symbols. They are living participants in Bali's ongoing spiritual theater, embodied in dance, worship, and the rhythm of daily prayer. To witness them is not simply to watch myth, but to confront the essence of duality that governs all life. Barong is the guardian of the island's soul. In most depictions, he appears as a magnificent lion-like creature adorned with gold, mirrors, and carved ornaments, his face combining gentleness and fury in equal measure. His body, covered in thick fur and bright embellishments, moves with a majesty that awes both children and priests. The people of Bali see Barong as the embodiment of protective energy, the leader of good spirits, a benevolent guardian who preserves harmony against corrupting forces. Yet, his battles are never final victories. The island's rituals acknowledge an eternal equilibrium. Light cannot exist without darkness, and even Barong's triumphs require the survival of his adversary, Rangda, to uphold the world's rhythm. Translate. Rangda, his eternal foe, is the queen of witches, the mother of devouring hunger, and the embodiment of chaos. Her form is hideous and regal at once, eyes bulging red, tusks gleaming white, tongue extended long and serpentine. She wears human bones as ornament and serpent-like hair as crown, standing as both terror and priestess of ancient magic. In the oldest myths, Rangda was once a wronged queen, condemned for defying the laws of kings and gods. Betrayed and shamed, she turned to forbidden sorcery, gaining dominion over death and pain. Her vengeance spread disease, famine, and madness until Barong rose to oppose her. Every performance of their cosmic duel replays this balance. Her wrath answered by his protection, her destruction feeding the renewal of life itself. The most sacred expression of this myth is the Barong dance, performed in villages across Bali as both theater and exorcism. As the gamelan's metallic rhythms rise and the dancers' masks gleam in torchlight, the ancient story unfolds. Rangda enters, wild and terrible, commanding her Layak followers to ravage the land. Her power seems overwhelming. Then Barong emerges, shimmering with divine energy, met by the roar of the crowd in reverent awe. The two forces clash, neither gaining permanent victory. When Rangda curses Barong's warriors, causing them to turn their creased daggers upon themselves, Barong intervenes, granting them trance protection. This climactic moment, where men stab their chests yet remain unharmed, is not illusion but sacred trust, a living belief that faith can make flesh invulnerable to darkness. Translate. For outsiders, the Barong dance might appear as folklore performance. For Balinese participants, it is a reenactment of metaphysical law. The stage is consecrated space, the music is incantation, and every gesture holds ritual potency. The purpose is not entertainment, but purification, to renew balance between the benevolent and the destructive. After each dance, offerings are placed for both Barong and Rangda, acknowledging their shared necessity. Evil is not denied, but contained, woven into the complex textile of harmony. This cyclical worldview distinguishes Balinese spirituality from moral dualisms elsewhere. Here, there is no final defeat, only perpetual negotiation between chaos and order. Extending from Rangda's sphere of influence are the Layak, practitioners of black magic said to serve her will. They wander by night, shapes shifting into dogs, pigs, or balls of fire, feeding on corpses and human vitality. In their most feared form, they resemble floating heads with trailing entrails. Images that echo the Manananggal of Malaysia and the Krasu of Thailand. The Layak represent the individual corruption that supports Rangda's cosmic chaos. Unlike her, who embodies universal imbalance, they embody personal transgression, jealousy, greed, the misuse of spiritual power for selfish ends. Their existence reinforces the Balinese conviction that magic is neutral. Only the heart of its wielder determines whether it heals or harms. Translate, spells to combat Layak are intricate. Priests, known as Balian, perform protective rituals using mantras, blessed water, and sacred drawings to trap wandering spirits. Amulets depicting Barong's head are hung in homes to repel dark intrusions. Yet beneath all these protective measures lies a deeper understanding that darkness can never be fully eradicated. Layak are as much a part of the island's identity as Barong himself. They symbolize temptation, the human tendency to seek shortcuts to power and satisfaction. In teaching fear of the Layak, elders teach humility, reminding the young that mastery without discipline leads only to spiritual decay. Anthropologically, these myths serve as profound expressions of Balinese social order. The struggle between Barong and Rangda parallels the harmony required among families, villages, and castes. Disputes and rivalries are tolerated, but must never descend into destruction. Ritual dramas act as both warning and catharsis, transforming conflict into art before it poisons reality. In the cycles of prayer and festival, the people of Bali rehearse survival. Their belief transforms myth into community architecture, ensuring that disagreements dissolve through shared spiritual performance rather than violence. Translate, Rangda's lineage also connects to older pre-Hindu deities of Java and the archipelago, blending local animism with Indian and Buddhist influence. In some tales, she is Durga's reflection, an aspect of the goddess turned dark to teach humility. In others, she is widow to an ancient king, representing female power ostracized by patriarchal boundaries. Whether demon or divine rebel, she embodies a truth often ignored, that creation requires destruction and womanhood, long feared, holds sacred authority equal to the gods. Thus, while Barong stands as paternal protector, Rangda endures as chaotic mother, necessary for the island's fertility, its storms, and its spiritual vigor. The dance's hypnotic rhythm captures more than mythic conflict. It evokes trance itself, inviting participants into the liminal state between human and divine. Spectators become witnesses to balance personified. Each clang of the gamelan, each swirl of incense, each gleaming mask becomes part of a living invocation. The performer's states of possession are not symbolic. They are accepted as genuine communion. The community joins in the suspension of ordinary time, participating collectively in the maintenance of harmony. The boundaries between art and sacred act vanish entirely. Translate. Tourists who visit Bali to witness such performances often marvel at the vibrancy, rarely realizing they are glimpsing a living rite shaped by centuries. For Balinese, even commerce surrounding these rituals serves devotion. Funds gathered for performances support temples and offerings, sustaining continuity between festivals and daily worship. Beyond spectacle, the persistence of the Barong and Rangda saga showcases how cultural identity endures colonial influence and modernization. Balinese tradition survives not by resisting change, but by absorbing and transforming it, just as Barong absorbs Rangda's chaos to maintain equilibrium. In the philosophy underlying these myths, every person carries both Barong and Rangda within the soul. Anger, jealousy, and arrogance are forms of Rangda energy. Compassion, patience, and protection reflect Barong's strength. Daily ceremonies on the island reaffirm this lesson. From small offerings left at doorways to the grand dances of temple festivals, every gesture acknowledges duality. To live in Bali's spiritual rhythm is to accept contradiction, not to defeat darkness, but to recognize it as an inseparable partner to light. The Barong dance is therefore not about war, but conversation, a negotiation that must continue endlessly to preserve balance. Translate. Many Balinese storytellers say that when Barong and Rangda clash, the island itself trembles. Rain follows their battles, feeding the rice fields. Volcanoes sleep a little longer. Even the ocean grows calm for a time. Whether metaphor or miracle, these effects express the belief that art and spirituality are indistinguishable, that performance invokes reality rather than merely depicting it. Humanity's role is to assist creation's equilibrium through ritual, emotion, and intention. The myth becomes not past event, but ongoing duty. As twilight falls over temple courtyards and drums echo through the night, dancers prepare once more to call Barong and Rangda into being. The air thickens with incense. Shadows merge with light. When the lion-faced guardian strides forward and the shrieking witch queen answers his challenge, the audience feels more than fear or joy. They feel connection to each other, to the earth, to forces much greater than themselves. And when the performance ends and silence returns, it is not victory or defeat that lingers, but harmony, a whisper reminding everyone that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the grace of balance maintained. Translate. Indonesia, with its thousands of islands and infinite stories, is a land where the living and the dead continuously share space. Temples rise beside graveyards, prayers mingle with incense and sea breeze, and the supernatural permeates daily life as naturally as breath. Across this scattered archipelago, the dead do not rest easily. They are close companions to the living, reminders that death is not an end, but a transformation. Among the most recognizable of these restless spirits are the Pokong, the Pontianak, and the Tuyul, each representing a different kind of boundary crossed, a different failure to let go of what should have passed on. These entities embody fears of improper burial, unresolved revenge, and corrupted innocence, blending Islamic, animist, and ancestral strands of Indonesian spirituality. The Pokong is among the most visible and dreaded of Indonesian ghosts. To understand it, one must first understand the Islamic burial custom from which it arises. The dead are wrapped tightly in a white shroud, called kafan, tied with knots at the feet, knees, neck, and head, before being laid to rest. After several days, the ties are meant to be released during prayer to symbolize the souls. But should the living neglect this duty, the spirit becomes trapped within its shroud, unable to ascend. The result is the pokong, a ghost that rises from its grave still bound, hopping through graveyards and streets, its face pale beneath the cloth, its body rigid and swaying with each uncanny movement. Its presence represents not evil intent, but the desperation of one abandoned by ritual. Translate: witness accounts describe the pokong's arrival as heralded by the smell of damp earth and the soft flapping sound of cloth brushing against the wind. When it appears, its face is often obscured, sometimes featureless, sometimes distorted by decay. It moves by hopping, the limbs constrained by burial bindings, which gives it a grotesque and pitiable aspect. Villagers tell of pokong sightings near unfinished graves, crossroads, or banana trees, places that connect the human and spiritual realms. Encountering one is not always fatal, but always significant. It means that some aspect of order has been forgotten. Traditions insist that if a pokong appears repeatedly near a household, a cleric must be summoned to recite prayers, releasing its spirit at last. In doing so, the balance between world and afterlife is restored through remembrance. While modern Indonesians often joke nervously about the pokong, it remains a potent moral figure. Its haunting illustrates the consequences of neglecting religious duty, turning ritual into moral architecture that sustains community harmony. Like many Southeast Asian spirits, the pokong is both terrifying and mournful, an image of the dead calling upon the living to fulfill their responsibility. To see it is to witness guilt take form, a plea to be acknowledged rather than feared. Beneath its horror lies compassion, the desire for rest denied by human forgetfulness. Translate: if the pokong embodies entrapment, the kuntilanak personifies vengeance blended with sorrow. She is perhaps Indonesia's most famous ghost, often conflated with her Malaysian cousin the Pontianak, but possessing distinct traits and attitude. The kuntilanak is the spirit of a woman who died during childbirth, her suffering twisting her into a being suspended between grief and fury. She appears as a pale woman clothed in flowing white, her long black hair falling over her face and shoulders. At night, her laughter rings softly, melodic, alluring, and unbearably sad. The sound may seem close or distant depending on one's fate. When her laugh seems near, she is far. When it seems far, she is beside you. The kuntilanak often targets men who have harassed or harmed women, tearing into them with long yellowed nails. Yet her motives are not purely vindictive. In some stories, she kills not from anger, but from loneliness, seeking to reclaim companionship denied in life. Her attacks are preceded by the scent of frangipani, or blood. Some villagers claim that to escape her grip, one must stuff a nail into the hole of her neck, binding her back to corporeal silence. The ritual resembles the Malaysian tale of the Pontianak, but in Java, Bali, and Sumatra alike, it carries an added dimension. The act of restraint symbolizes society's attempt to control the uncontrollable, to suppress feminine power, blended with grief. Translate: the kuntilanak is both feared and pitied. Pregnant women avoid traveling at night to escape her gaze, yet shrines dedicated to her abound, where offerings are made to soothe her wandering spirit. Farmers invoke her name during planting season as both curse and prayer, asking that her hunger for life be sated through the flourishing of crops. Through her, the natural and spiritual worlds merge. Fields, fertility, and death entwined in an inseparable cycle. The kuntilanak thus represents more than just a ghost. She is an archetype of suffering returned to strength, a manifestation of the anguish embedded in womanhood and transformation through pain. In the bustling markets and quiet alleys of Indonesia dwells another, smaller presence, the Tuyul, the spirit child of greed. While the Kuntilanak haunts with sorrow and the Pokong with longing, the Tuyul is the embodiment of moral corruption. Said to appear as a small hairless child with glinting eyes and greenish skin, the Tuyul is conjured through dark rituals by those who crave wealth without labor. Its masters keep it bound in jars or within charms, feeding it milk and sweets to maintain loyalty. At night, the Tuyul sneaks into homes and businesses, stealing coins or valuables that appear to vanish without trace. It delights in playfulness, but bears a sinister undertone. Its innocence serves the impurity of its owner. Translate: the relationship between master and Tuyul reveals deep moral tension. The creature's obedience comes at a profound cost. In exchange for material gain, the summoner forfeits spiritual well-being, burdened by constant fear of retribution. The Tuyul feeds not only on offerings, but on the emotional corrosion of its keeper. Families said to harbor one often become withdrawn and paranoid, their wealth bringing isolation instead of joy. Villagers avoid their homes, whispering about the strange sounds of laughter or crawling footsteps heard beneath the floorboards. The Tuyul, like greed itself, cannot be satisfied. Once bound, it clings to the lineage of its summoner, haunting descendants long after the first pact is forgotten. Attempts to rid oneself of a Tuyul rarely succeed. Old rituals describe burial in a doll-like effigy or adoption into a temple's care. Though most say the only escape is confession and charity, acts of genuine repentance that undo the creature's binding. Symbolically, the Tuyul preserves the ancient lesson that morality, not magic, dictates fortune. In Indonesia's syncretic spirituality, where Islam, Hinduism, and animism coexist, the Tuyul bridges realms of wealth and sin, innocent play and spiritual ruin. To summon it is to grasp at control over life's uncertainty, forgetting that every gift from the unseen realm demands repayment. Translate: taken together, the Pokong, Kuntilanak, and Tuyul represent a triptych of human failing. The Pokong warns against negligence of duty and the pain of abandonment. The Kuntilanak exposes the enduring wound of betrayal and loss. The Tuyul reveals greed's cost, the slow erosion of soul in exchange for fleeting comfort. In these entities, Indonesians find not merely fear, but reflection, each ghost mirroring what is weakest within human. They haunt because we forget. They suffer because the living break promises to the dead, to each other, or to their own conscience. The continued presence of these myths in modern Indonesia underscores the resilience of belief. City lights have not dimmed their power. Television dramas, comic books, and modern horror films keep them alive, reinterpreting their essence for new audiences. Children hear warnings recited not from pulpits, but phones, yet their meaning remains unchanged. Moral neglect breeds haunting. Even in urban apartments where prayer mats replace village altars, people still light incense after bad dreams, still whisper apologies to unseen listeners. The supernatural endures because it remains useful, a language for remorse translated into narrative. Translate: religion adds further depth to these fears. In Islam, the idea of spirits or jinn coexists easily with local myths, intertwining foreign faith with native animism. Clerics warn believers to maintain prayer so as not to invite wandering souls. while older generations teach that the recitation of sacred verses can grant rest to tormented ghosts. This dual approach, ritual and religion, makes Indonesian folklore one of the most syncretic mythic systems in the world. It allows Pocong, Kuntilanak, and Tuyul to remain within cultural consciousness without contradiction. They are at once faith lessons, cautionary tales, and shadows of human limitation. To walk through an Indonesian village at night is to sense their presence everywhere. A curtain stirring when there is no wind, a faint cry over still water, footsteps on soft ground that leave no imprint. The living coexist with these murmurs as naturally as they do with rain and heat. People do not seek to destroy them, but to keep balance, the same equilibrium sought by every culture in Southeast Asia. Between fear and faith, memory and forgetting, these spirits endure as custodians of morality and consequence. And when the rooster crows and dawn dissolves the remnants of darkness, the people know the cycle will begin again, that the dead, the living, and the unseen will continue their ancient conversation, whispering beneath the breath of Indonesia itself. Translate. Across the golden plains of Myanmar and the ancient jungles of Cambodia, the air hums with devotion and dread. Here, ghosts are not strangers, and worship is often indistinguishable from fear. Every pagoda, shrine, and rural home bears silent witnesses to an older order of spirits, forces that predate organized religion yet persist within it. In Myanmar, these forces are known as Nats, divine specters who wield both protection and punishment with the precision of kings. In Cambodia, their counterparts, the Arak, linger as echoes of pre-Buddhist belief, entities believed to inhabit forests, rivers, and ancestral land. Between them unfolds a theology where the boundary between holiness and haunting dissolves completely, and reverence is always tinged with terror. The Nats of Myanmar are not a single species of spirit, but an entire pantheon of 37 official beings, each a hybrid of deity and ghost. Some were once human, elevated to divinity through violent death or unwavering service. Others emerged from natural phenomena or myths lost to time. Together, they embody the moral and cosmic forces undergirding Burmese spirituality. At the heart of their veneration stands Mount Popa, a volcanic peak rising dramatically from the plains. Considered the dwelling place of the most powerful Nats. Pilgrims climb its heights carrying offerings of bananas, flowers, and bottles of liquor, appealing for blessings in business, health, or love. Yet every devotee knows that such petitions are double-edged. Nats are mercurial. Their generosity can protect, but their anger can ruin. Translate. The origins of Nat worship intertwine with Burmese history. Before the arrival of Theravada Buddhism, animist beliefs dominated the region, treating natural features as inhabited by sentient energies. When Buddhism took hold under King Anawrahta in the 11th century, these spirits could not simply be erased. Instead, they were absorbed into the new faith, forming a parallel system of reverence, where temples to the Buddha coexisted beside shrines for Nats. This fusion endures today. To understand spiritual life in Myanmar is to see devotion not as purity of belief, but as coexistence between divine compassion and supernatural fear. The Nats remain honored precisely because they remind humanity of its frailty before unseen power. Stories about individual Nats reveal as much about human as they do about the divine. Consider Min Mahagiri, known as the Lord of the Great Mountain. Once a mighty blacksmith, he was betrayed and executed by a jealous king, His head hung from a tamarind tree as warning. But even death failed to contain him. His spirit grew more powerful and vengeful, striking down all who approached the tree with malice. Eventually, the terrified monarch enshrined him as a gnat to placate his wrath, a recurring theme in Burmese myth, where deification is less reward than appeasement. Min Mahagiri became protector of cities and conqueror of evil spirits, revered yet feared. Such tales encapsulate the moral paradox at the heart of Nat worship. Fear becomes faith, and reverence emerges from terror. Translate. The rituals surrounding Nats blend piety with spectacle. Their festivals, called Nat Pui, are celebrations of possession and ecstasy, where devotees dance in trance to hypnotic music, invoking the spirits through rhythm, color, and song. The line between human and divine blurs as mediums, often women or transgender performers known as Nat Kada, the spirit wives, allow possession to occur. Through them, the Nats speak, bless, and sometimes scold worshippers, offering spillover with fruit, rice wine, and roasted meats, while musicians strike gongs in relentless cadence. To the uninitiated, these festivals might resemble revelry, but to those within the faith, they are communion, where chaos becomes sacred order enacted through sound and motion. Nat Kadao occupy a particularly fascinating role in this spiritual hierarchy. Chosen or afflicted by spirits, they embody acceptance of liminality, living as vessels between realms. Historically marginalized, they transform social exclusion into spiritual authority, bridging communities with unseen forces. Their relationship with the Nats mirrors the country's reconciliation of contradiction. A Buddhist nation that worships beings born of violence, a conservative society guided by mediums of fluid identity. Through them, myth continues to breathe, uniting Myanmar's cultural diversity under the shared language of reverence. Translate. Moving eastward, the spiritual terrain of Cambodia reveals entities of equal consequence but darker temperament, the Arak. Where Myanmar's Nats have been institutionalized into divine bureaucracy, the Arak remain raw, primal, and capricious. They are the spirits of ancestors and disease, not bound by temples, but residing in fields, jungle clearings, and water sources. Their influence threads through Cambodian rural belief, shaping the customs that govern health, morality, and social cohesion. To the villagers who live close to natural rhythms, the Arak are not myths, but neighbors whose moods determine fortune or misfortune. Their world is one of constant negotiation rather than devotion. When illness strikes, it is often attributed not to germs, but to an angered Arak. The afflicted must seek mediation from a Kru Khmer, a local shaman skilled in communication with these entities. The rituals are both theatrical and intimate. Drumming, chanting, and offerings of rice, chicken, or palm wine. The Kru enters trance, his body trembling as the Arak speaks through him, diagnosing the source of offense and prescribing atonement. For the community, these ceremonies reaffirm shared values of respect, humility, and unity. By restoring harmony between spirit and settlement, the village heals itself collectively from both physical and moral decay. Translate. Unlike organized religion, which fixes belief into doctrine, the veneration of Arak is fluid, adapting easily to circumstance. The same spirit might bless one family and destroy another if neglected. Ancestors can transform into Arak over generations, especially if their descendants fail to maintain proper rituals. Such beliefs ensure that the living remain tethered to memory, the unbroken chain of lineage extending beyond time. The Arak thus represent both continuity and warning, They remind Cambodians that heritage demands care and that the unseen world is inseparable from the mundane one. Historically, Cambodia's relationship with spirits reveals deep cultural layering. Before Hinduism and later Buddhism reigned, indigenous animist systems already shaped the Khmer worldview. The concept of Arak predates Angkor's sandstone towers, coexisting alongside the later pantheons of Devas and Bodhisattvas. Rather than erasing earlier faiths, each religion absorbed its predecessors, creating a spiritual mosaic unique to the region. Today, one can find Buddhist monks presiding over ceremonies that invoke Arak for protection, a confluence of worlds that encapsulates the Southeast Asian talent for synthesis rather than suppression. Translate, yet the Arak are not benign overseers. Some are notoriously cruel, punishing what the community calls loss of moral heat, behavior that endangers social harmony, such as greed, theft, or adultery. When a misdeed occurs, villagers whisper of Arak striking with fever or delusion. A communal exorcism becomes necessary, demanding confession, apology, and ritual sacrifice. Through fear, moral discipline is maintained. The dark mystery of the Arak ensures ethical coherence where written law may fail, proving once more that such spirits are as much guardians as threats. Parallels between Nats and Arak are striking despite their differences in mythology. Both embody unresolved tension between chaos and control, tradition and faith. Both blur the boundary between God and ghost, suggesting that morality in these cultures is enforced through awe rather than obedience. Their worshippers fear them, but would not dream of denying them. These spirits govern not only villages and families, but natural phenomena. The fertility of crops, the rhythm of monsoon, the balance of disease and wellness. Life, therefore, is a permanent dialogue with the unseen. Translate. In the modern era, belief in Nats and Arak persists with surprising vitality. In Myanmar's cities, glass towers rise beside roadside shrines spangled with flowers and candles left for the spirits. In Phnom Penh and Siem Reap, taxi drivers still hang protective talismans blessed by Buddhist monks who quietly acknowledge Arak influence. The young may scoff in daylight, but few dare to sleep alone after mocking these names. Such superstition, far from vanishing, continues to evolve, translating old fears into new contexts. Ghosts now haunt smartphones and television dramas, yet their ancient logic remains intact. Disrespect the unseen, and it will answer. Both nations' folklore demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of equilibrium. Nats and Arak are not remnants of primitive religion, but adaptive systems of ethics and ecology. They instill communal care for and heritage through reverent fear. By honoring the spirits of water, forest, and ancestors, societies ensure continued respect for the environment that sustains them. Every offering of fruit or murmured prayer becomes a covenant, a promise between humanity and a larger living world. The supernatural thus serves not as escape from reality, but as its most enduring guardian. Translate. As twilight descends over Mount Popa's golden temples or the vast ruins of Angkor, the air fills with incense and murmured invocations. Candles flicker in homes, shadows shift among banyan trunks, and offerings glisten with dew. In those moments, the divide between past and present blurs. The Nats gaze down from their shrines of marble and flame. The Arak whisper from unseen corners of forest and bone. Together, they maintain Southeast Asia's oldest truth, that life, death, and exist in continual conversation. It is not belief that binds these worlds together, but respect. The quiet acceptance that something vast, sentient, and invisible watches every step humanity takes beneath the stars. Translate. Vietnam's mythology flows like its great rivers, vast, winding, and full of hidden depths. Between the Red River Delta in the north and the Mekong's ancient sprawl in the south, stories ripple through centuries of empire, war, and reverence for the unseen world. The Vietnamese people's relationship with spirits is intimate and deeply interwoven with the land's geography, where mountains, forests, and especially water hold memory and power. From the watery domains of the Naga-like Long Vuong, the dragon kings of the sea, to the tormented souls known as Ma Da who haunt rivers, lakes, and wells, the nation's folklore reveals a belief system both graceful and haunting. Here, souls do not vanish. They linger in the current, whispering warnings and promises carried by the tide. Among Vietnam's most enduring myths are those of the water spirits, the guardians, rulers, and sometimes destroyers of the aquatic domain. Water is both blessing and threat. It sustains rice fields yet floods villages, reflecting the duel of creation that runs throughout Southeast Asian myth. The Long Vuong, often translated as dragon kings, are revered as sovereigns of the oceanic deeps. Dwelling in jade palaces beneath the waves, they command legions of aquatic beings and govern the rains, tides, and storms. In ancient temple carvings and imperial scripts, they take the form of magnificent serpentine creatures, long-bodied dragons adorned with scales that shimmer blue-green like moonlight on the sea. To fishermen and coastal dwellers, they embody both divine guardianship and unpredictable wrath. Translate. Legend says each major body of water in Vietnam is ruled by its own dragon king, whose temperament shapes the surrounding region's fortunes. If properly honored with offerings and prayers, the Long Vuong ensures calm seas and plentiful fishing. But when disrespected or forgotten, his storms remind mortals that the ocean tolerates no arrogance. In certain villages, it is said that the laughter of children playing in the surf can awaken a dragon king's curiosity, bringing sudden waves or shifting tides to test the people's reverence. Rituals of propitiation mix Confucian ceremony and indigenous animism. Incense, folded paper boats, and the chanting of ancient petitions, blending the earthly and celestial in songs of gratitude and caution. Beyond these mighty rulers dwell the Ma Da, the drowned spirits of Vietnam's waters. Unlike the divine Long Vuong, the Ma Da are remnants of human suffering, bound to the places where they met untimely death. Often portrayed as souls of those who drowned unjustly, they linger in rivers and ponds, luring the living toward watery graves. Their stories caution travelers against swimming after dusk or wandering too close to still water under a full moon. Witnesses describe them as shapes gliding beneath the surface, sometimes pale and beautiful, sometimes misshapen and ghastly, emerging only to grasp an ankle, whispering pleas for company beneath the waves. Though feared, they elicit pity too, for their existence is a plea for remembrance rather than vengeance. Translate. Village elders recount that Ma Da spirits can be appeased through small acts of honor. Families who lose a member to water death light floating lanterns during the annual Vu Lan festival, guiding lost souls toward peace. Offerings of rice, incense, and salt scattered over rivers calm restless currents. Such gestures transform tragedy into continuity, ensuring that even death contributes to harmony instead of fear. These practices reveal Vietnam's enduring reverence for balance. The idea that peace arises not from conquering the unknown, but from negotiating with it. In a land so defined by water's power, spiritual respect is as practical as it is sacred. The influence of Buddhist and Taoist ideas reshaped these ancient animist roots, but never erased them. Under dynasties influenced by Chinese thought, Vietnam's cosmology evolved to include heavens, underworlds, and celestial offices. Yet, local water deities retained unique life beyond doctrine. Fishermen still whispered to invisible rulers of the tide, and farmers addressed their prayers to river spirits before planting. The Vietnamese dragon, though descended from Chinese imagery, evolved its own identity. Gentler, more benevolent, often tied to reign and imperial legitimacy rather than martial dominance. Thus, when emperors claimed descent from dragons, they invoked not domination, but the promise of prosperity and cosmic balance. Translate. The myth of the Vietnamese people's origin embodies this connection to water and divinity. According to legend, the nation was born from the union of Lac Long Quan, a dragon lord of the sea, and Ao Ko, a celestial fairy of the mountains. Their love united water and earth, birthing 100 sons, the ancestors of the Vietnamese people. Yet their realms were incompatible. The dragon belonged to the deep, the fairy to the highlands. Parting sorrowfully, they divided their children, half to the mountains and half to the coast, establishing the eternal bond between land and sea that defines Vietnam's identity. This origin myth, told for over 1,000 years, encapsulates the nation's belief in balance and duality, where every conflict conceals connection. The sea dragon's influence also pervades Vietnamese art and architecture. At temples, dragons curl along rooflines and archways, their forms coiling endlessly in motion, symbolizing life's perpetuity. In water puppetry, one of Vietnam's oldest performance arts, miniature dragons burst through shallow pools to mimic the chaos of rain and storm. Audiences cheer as these symbolic beasts battle serpents and spirits, their movements accompanied by the rhythmic pulse of drums and gongs. What seems theatrical to tourists is ritual to locals, a play recounting humanity's dialogue with and the spirits beneath it. Translate. Yet not all water spirits in Vietnam are benevolent or majestic. Some tales speak of the Con Tin, the cursed souls of women who drowned due to betrayal or murder. They emerge from lakes as vengeful phantoms, their hair floating like dark seaweed, their cries echoing through the mist. These beings mirror the tragic feminine archetype seen across Southeast Asia. The spirit wronged and restless, wielding fear as her only justice. Young men are warned never to answer a mysterious female voice near water, lest they be dragged under. Such myths are moral instruction cloaked in ghost story, teaching caution, fidelity, and respect for unseen laws. Forested mountain regions contribute their own spectral inhabitants. In central Vietnam, hunters speak of the Ma Nuong, the spirits of women who died waiting for lovers who never returned from war or sea. Their forms first appear as gentle lights dancing through the jungle, guiding travelers astray. These tales weave together universal human emotion and the specific trauma of Vietnam's long history of conflict. In every lost soul hovering above a rice paddy or beneath river fog lies the echo of communal memory, transmuted into myth so that pain might find purpose. Translate. The modern Vietnamese worldview integrates these ancient spirits with surprising pragmatism. Though cities from Hanoi to Ho Chi Minh bustle with modern life, offerings to the Long Vuong and river ghosts remain ritual obligations. During the Lunar New Year, households launch paper boats or carp-shaped lanterns onto waterways, symbolizing the release of accumulated misfortune and seeking favor from water deities. Even modern fishermen pour rice wine into the sea before embarking, whispering thanks to unseen protectors. These acts blur time's boundaries, allowing ancient faith to coexist with modern aspiration. Vietnam shares spiritual kinship with neighboring Laos and Cambodia, extending the web of belief across borders. The Mekong River, flowing through all three nations, serves not only as economic lifeline, but as mythical artery. Each culture imagines guardians within its depths: the Cambodian serpents of the Arak, the Lao Nagas, and Vietnam's Long Vuong, merging into one connected pantheon. Festivals along the river's length mirror one another. Glowing offerings, prayers for rain, stories of divine dragons saving fishermen or punishing arrogance. This regional synchronicity reflects a truth older than political boundaries, that the spiritual imagination of Southeast Asia flows like its rivers, unconfined and eternal. Translate. Beneath these myths lies an ecological wisdom that modern humanity would do well to heed. Water spirits represent not superstition, but reverence for the natural systems sustaining life. In respecting rivers as divine, these cultures enforced conservation long before the concept existed. Pollution was not only physical crime, but spiritual offense. To foul the water was to insult the gods and invite destruction. In this worldview, environmental ethics and metaphysics become indistinguishable, binding human responsibility to the survival of itself. The supernatural thus teaches ecological humility through awe rather than law. To stand on the banks of the Mekong at dusk is to feel that philosophy embodied. The air thickens with the scent of wet earth and incense from a nearby shrine. Lanterns drift on the slow-moving current, their flames mirrored in the water like countless small suns fading into night. Somewhere, a fisherman murmurs a prayer to the Dragon King, asking safe passage through storm season. Nearby, children skip stones, unaware that each ripple they make awakens ancient eyes beneath the surface. The river flows on, glittering with ghosts and gods, carrying within it the memory of all who have lived and died along its shores. And as the moon rises over Vietnam's endless waterways, one feels the living pulse of myth itself, not merely surviving, but alive, fluid, and eternal. Translate. Every story ends, but none truly dies. In Southeast Asia, myth does not belong to the past. It breathes within the present, moving through generations like the monsoon wind that reshapes the landscape but never alters its essence. The same creatures that haunted ancient farmers at dusk now linger in the glare of city lights, their shadows stretching across digital screens and urban folklore. The Manananggal still flies through Filipino nightmares. The Naga still coils beneath Thai rivers. The Pontianak still walks Malaysia's backstreets in whispers and warning. The world that once believed in spirits has not abandoned them. It has evolved with them. In every market, in every village nestled between jungle and sea, there remains a quiet reverence for the unseen. Even amid skyscrapers and smartphones, people continue to honor the guardians of land and water, forest and sky. This continuity is not superstition, but cultural instinct, the recognition that what is forgotten becomes dangerous. The rituals may change, incense replaced by candles, chants streamed instead of spoken, but the impulse remains identical: to maintain balance between the human and the divine. In that balance, the future of myth endures. Translate. The persistence of these beliefs speaks to a deeper understanding of human psychology. Across Southeast Asia, stories of ghosts, dragons, and divine beasts were never just tales of fear. They are repositories of collective emotion: grief, awe, gratitude, guilt. The Pontianak and Kuntilanak embody unacknowledged pain. The Tikbalang and Naga represent untamed power and the necessity of respect. The Barong and Rangda dramatize balance as a living necessity, not a philosophical abstraction. Each creature is a mirror, reflecting both the peril of arrogance and the beauty of humility before forces larger than oneself. As belief adapts to new times, the lessons remain constant. In the modern world, these spirits have found new mediums of survival. The Manananggal appears in films and streaming series, recast as both villain and tragic figure. The Thai Phi Kraswe haunts contemporary horror games, while the Indonesian Tuyul populates urban legends retold on online forums. Every digital retelling is a new ritual, a new invocation. The screens we hold so close to our faces have become lamps attracting the same ancient beings that once flickered in torchlight. Technology, far from killing myth, has amplified it, transforming folklore into an evolving organism that feeds on human imagination. Translate. Yet modernization brings its own challenges. The global homogenization of culture threatens to erode the local identities that birthed these myths. As cities expand and languages fade, the oral storytellers, the elders, shamans, performers, become rarer. In some communities, the creatures survive only as Halloween decorations or distant horror tropes detached from their deeper meaning. But folklore has always been resilient. Its essence lies not in preservation, but transformation. When religion, empire, and colonialism fail to annihilate these stories, the digital age will not either. Memory adapts. Myth regenerates. Consider, for instance, how Thailand's Naga has transitioned from temple relic to ecological symbol. Conservation movements along the Mekong invoke the serpents as emblems of environmental guardianship. Protecting water means honoring the dragon's domain. In the Philippines, storytellers and artists reimagine the Aswang not as predator, but as metaphor for social outsiders, reclaiming fear into empathy. Across Indonesia and Malaysia, festivals once performed to ward off ghosts are being revived as cultural heritage events, reconnecting youth to ancestral art through modern choreography and music. The ghosts are not fading. They are evolving in form, purpose, and language. Translate. This evolution is not without paradox. In reclaiming myth through art and academia, some risk romanticizing the very fears these stories once sought to explain. The supernatural becomes performance rather than presence, symbol rather than possibility. Yet even stripped of literal belief, these narratives retain their moral structure. The Manananggal still warns against selfish curiosity. The Hantu Raya still embodies the corrosive of greed. Whether or not people believe in their physical existence, they continue to absorb the ethics these figures convey. Thus, folklore shifts from faith to philosophy without losing its role as moral compass. Folklore also functions as a bridge between converging belief systems. In Buddhist monasteries of Myanmar, one can find monks chanting beside Nat shrines, acknowledging spirits not as rivals to religion, but as extensions of it. In Cambodia, Arak rituals performed by shamans coexist with temple blessings conducted by monks. Across islands and borders, animism persists under the surface of structured religion, enriching rather than contradicting it. This plurality is not confusion. It is wisdom forged from coexistence. Spiritual truth in Southeast Asia has never demanded exclusivity. It has required harmony. Translate. The storytelling traditions that carry these myths are part of why they persist. Oral histories, shadow plays, dance dramas, and puppet performances translate invisible fears into tangible art. The Barong dance in Bali, for instance, is not merely entertainment. It is ritual exorcism, theater, and theology combined. The audience participates as witness, believer, and inheritor. Through such performances, generations commune across time, ensuring that memory never fully becomes history. In this way, folklore outlives mortality. It exists because it is repeated, reshaped, and relived. Even the act of fear transforms within folklore. Horror, in the Southeast Asian context, is never nihilistic. It is instructive. To fear the Aswang is to understand the cost of betrayal. To dread the toil is to contemplate the consequences of greed. Fear becomes reflection, guiding ethical choices as surely as law or scripture. When handled with care, these myths refine rather than repress human behavior. The darkness they depict is never without purpose. It exists to illuminate boundaries, to remind mortals that even in survival, respect must never be forgotten. Translate. The endurance of these legends across centuries of colonization and modernization reveals another truth: that myth serves as quiet resistance. Through stories, cultures guard their autonomy. The tales that fascinate global audiences today once protected identities under siege, embedding local cosmology within everyday life. Speaking of dragons, nymphs, and ghosts, was once a coded way of preserving memory when history itself was censored or rewritten by empire. Each creature thus carries within it the resilience of the people who imagined it. The survival of myth is the survival of identity. As globalization continues to blur national distinctions, this mosaic of belief offers Southeast Asia not just heritage, but strength. Folklore binds countries across the region into shared understanding, a linguistic, spiritual, and emotional continuity that transcends borders. The Philippine Aswang, the Thai Phi Krasu, and the Malaysian Penanggalan are not separate entities, but reflections of one another, variations of the same primal concept adapted through geography and culture. Together, they form an invisible network of regional mythology, proof that humanity's deepest fears and hopes are universal, even when spoken in different tongues. Translate. In recent years, educators and artists have begun reclaiming this network intentionally. Museums host exhibitions on the creatures of the archipelagos. YouTubers and podcasters retell ancestral stories with modern flair, reigniting youth fascination. Game designers integrate the Tikbalang and Pontianak into digital worlds that reach millions. Some criticize this commercialization, yet it fulfills the same purpose as the ancient fire circle once did: to keep the stories alive. What matters is not purity, but presence. As long as they are spoken, these myths remain entities of power. At the core of this living folklore lies the same principle that animated its birth: reverence for equilibrium. Whether between humanity and civilization and wilderness, good and evil, or technology and spirit, Southeast Asian mythology insists that all exists in relationship. The Naga must contend with drought. The Layak must be balanced by the Barong. Faith must coexist with fear. Perhaps this is the ultimate wisdom the region offers: a philosophy where harmony is not static peace, but perpetual motion, a dance of opposites whose continuation ensures survival. Culturally, spiritually, and ecologically, that philosophy remains relevant. Translate. And so, as the modern world races forward, these old souls walk beside it, their forms flickering between myth and metaphor. In the glow of city billboards reflecting off the river's surface, one might still glimpse the curve of a dragon's back or hear whispers of a woman's laughter drifting through the humid air. The spirits have not faded. They have adapted, carrying their ancient lessons into the rhythm of electric life. To believe in them is not regression, but remembrance. a recognition that stories, like rivers, may change their course, but never their source. Translate. Before we close this journey through the haunted and sacred veins of Southeast Asia, take a moment to reflect on what these tales truly are. An expression of humanity's desire to link the tangible and the transcendent. Through monsters and gods, through horror and beauty, they have taught empathy, humility, and awe. And if these creatures continue to dwell among us, in shadow, in art, in memory, it is because they are needed still. They are our reminders that myth is not a relic, but a compass, pointing ever toward wonder. The old world has not vanished, it simply endures within us. Thank you for joining this exploration through the unseen realms of Southeast Asia. If you found meaning in these stories, continue the journey, share this collection, and subscribe to Echoes of the Old World. The next legend might already be breathing somewhere behind the veil of the ordinary, waiting for new eyes to see it and new voices to give it life once more.